Hi guys, thanks for joining us again this week as myself, Tristan Griffiths, and the lovely Dawn Carter discuss building better communities. That's both online and in person. It's a hot topic that a lot of people are interested in as people are building more authentic connections through the likes of live streaming, as well as through various different social mediums. For those of you who don't know, I run a brand called AllThingsNetworking.com, where we help people to tell a better story online through whatever the best medium is for their business. We work with 60 businesses across 3 continents and run 8 of our own brands. I'm going to let Dawn introduce herself and tell you what she does.
Yeah, well, welcome everyone. My name is Dawn Carter. I'm at DCart on the socials. There's my high-tech card right there. I don't know if you can see that, but I'm at DCart on just about everywhere you could find me. I am the marketing director for a company called Twubs. We've been around the event tweet to screen industry longer than anyone for about, I'd say 2009. And part of my job as the director of marketing is to observe a lot of our clients just doing some really great things with building communities, online communities. So I've been active in the Twitter world probably for about the same time, since about 2008. So I've seen a lot. Yep. Oh, now I can't hear. So you know what? I can't hear you now, Tristan.
Sorry, I mute myself when I'm doing other stuff. Sorry. So yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge the people who are here with us live in the chat. But also for those of you who are, if you're watching this repurposed on a blog or on YouTube or anywhere else, and you want to get involved in the conversation, 2 ways you can do that. The first one is just to use the hashtag ATN Talk. So you can get involved in the conversation around whatever the topic is for the week. The other thing you can do is come over to blab.im/ATW networking, and you'll find in that on that page, on that profile, you'll find scheduled blab for the coming week and what the topic is. And if you've got any feedback during the week, feel free to use that hashtag, tweet there, or leave comments in the blab for us to read when we get to going live for the week. So we were talking about building authentic connections, and I love that Dawn uses the phrase "the digital water cooler" to describe kind of how people come together. If you imagine in workplaces and things, people come together around a water cooler, and that's how they build their connections and they get to know each other. And now we're more blessed than ever to be able to use the likes of Blab or Periscope to build authentic connections with people that we maybe wouldn't necessarily meet in real life. So, I mean, Dawn, you give us an example of, any experiences where you've connected with some, other than obviously myself, because we're doing this together. But I mean, outside of this, a couple of people that maybe you've met, and give us a story about how you did that.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, let me see. One of the examples is using Twitter chats. That's a great virtual water cooler, a great place to meet other people who are interested in a topic that you want to get smarter about. Typically, Twitter chats are going to be times where, they happen once a week, and you can show up and meet other people who are also passionate about that. I think one of the great examples is H2H chat, Brian Kramer's H2H chat, which is a human-to-human chat. I get to meet a lot of folks who are very, I'll say, like-hearted and like-minded in their use of social, where it's how do we humanize our brand? So I have loved the people that I've gotten to meet there. And you start to see the same folks, week after week, because again, it's almost like showing up to watch your favorite show together. So that's been something that's been really fun to do. But again, it was a topic that brought us together around that virtual water cooler, and then from there, it really is up to each individual person to how you pursue or how you maintain those relationships.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's a really good thing to kind of start with. I think those connections can be made, like you say, whether it's through those Twitter chats or whether it's through watching someone's Periscope and getting involved in the comments there. It's completely about what you do, because we're talking obviously about building better communities. I've literally rushing to get to this from watching a scope that Brian Fanzo just did, talking about the community that he's got on Periscope and some crazy amounts of comments going on there. But it's really important building that community side, looking at how do you build that better. And I think it's to do with a lot of the follow-up. A lot of people get involved in a Twitter hour and then they kind of forget about maybe all the people that are there that, you know, we've just chatted to 20 or 30 people in that hour, a lot backwards and forwards. And then that hour's over, right? Okay, I need to, and I appreciate obviously people's time is precious, but you know, a little bit of more interaction beyond those Twitter chats will build the community, will build a stronger connection with the people that you've maybe met around that digital water cooler. So it gives a great opportunity for reaching out, obviously, especially through Twitter chats where you've now got their Twitter handle and you can go and message out to them. If they've got direct messages on, you can actually have, you know, a private chat with them, get to know them a little bit better. And obviously, the more time you invest in getting to know someone, the better and the deeper the relationship becomes as well.
So I do have actually an example that was kind of funny. It was someone that I had actually met on Blab, Sylvia Spivak from Cisco, I think it is, up in the Bay Area. I met her in real life and, you know, made that connection. So I started the relationship on, actually I started the relationship. I had never met her on Blab. She was, active in hosting quite a few shows. I met her in real life, continued the conversation or the relationship on Twitter. And then through that, she tagged me in some crazy game she had called Velfie Love, where you're shooting video selfies of yourself. And she tagged me and a couple other folk that I had never met, but it was almost like a virtual invitation to come play with me on this random thing. And I had never done a video selfie before, and it didn't have to be long, just a little 10-second thing. But that was, again, just a way to engage. She invited me into something fun, which I thought, what a great, you know, that was a nice best practices moment for the community that she's building. She has her part of her brand, I guess, or when people think of her now, whenever I think of her as she's a party. She's fun, you know, like, so.
Yeah, and I think that's great. I mean, obviously, in different environments, I'm very heavily immersed in live streaming specifically for business. I know there's a lot of people who are making brilliant life connections. Just, you know, they're just enjoying meeting new people or seeing new bits of the world. I mean, when I first got into Periscope, my first Periscope follow and broadcast, the person I got involved with was actually Jeff, that does the walk-arounds in New York City. So Jeff Goldberg. And that for me was like, wow, you know, this is somewhere I've always wanted to go, I've wanted to see, and just how he delivers and builds that kind of, you feel like you're there when he's doing that broadcast. And then to be able to connect, and I've been then on in a live broadcast over here on Blab, where we've actually talked. We still haven't met physically in person, but we've had a lot of conversation and chats and kind of feedback going both ways. But one of the big things for me, because obviously I do it specifically around a business environment, is the amount of knowledge that you can pick up from the people who are around you. It's that whole, the phrase being, if you're the cleverest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. Well, here you've got the opportunity to be in so many different rooms so quickly. I'm just going to hat tip, actually, Stephen Caggiano has just come in, and I co-host a show with Stephen, and every week I'm blown away. He always gives me some new trick or tip or, you know, advice on how I can use different bits of platforms to kind of improve my strategy. But the process in doing it is that we're always in a very giving and serving environment. And so we're actually helping other people. But all the time that we're doing that, we're also learning from each other, all the tips and tricks and the things that we each know. So surrounding ourselves with, traditionally, it would have been you'd have to go to seminars or to meetings or to networking things. Now we can basically have these virtual, like you say, these digital water coolers where it's a conversation going on across the globe. And so connecting with a whole load of people that we may not ever meet but in person, but it might be that person could actually become a really good friend. And get to know you and understand you. And there's been a lot of conversation this week, jumping in and out of various broadcasts and listening to other people around the topic of how a lot of people are now finding they're actually building deeper connections with people through online than maybe the people who live next door to them at home, which is really interesting. And I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on kind of why that is, and if it's a good thing as well, or is it that it maybe pulls away from that we don't spend as much time with the people who live right on our doorstep?
Yeah,
So
I think that's a great topic of discussion, because you hear a lot of people talk about work-life balance and being able. A lot of folks who work from home or digital, digitally commute. Sometimes it's hard to turn that off. And so I think that there is a value. I'll say it's a danger or a temptation to be able to, who doesn't want to be on a platform where everyone thinks you're brilliant, or, that you're connecting and you're making it. I mean, people will be drawn to that. And, people in your real world, I'll just say, our everyday life, will see the other aspects of you. And so I think it's really important that we just remain, balanced in whatever we're doing. How do you maintain a list and check how often you've contacted? Oh, so someone's asking a great question, about, interacting with folks. You can use different tools. I mean, I use something like Highrise. It's like a Basecamp type product to know what kind of conversations I've had. But like I think the real thing that you've touched on, Tristan, is this generosity thing. I mean, that is going to always grow a community when you're generous, whether online or offline.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I'm someone who's a strong believer in my, like the whole thing around my business is we're very coming from a serving place. It's not we're better than you or anything like that. It's actually very much the other way, in the fact that if there's physically anything we can do to go and help people. I mean, there's people that I've been helping online this week who I don't necessarily have a direct affiliation with. And so just reaching out and seeing if there's a way I can do that, and not with any expectation of anything in return, because it's just the feeling you get from helping people is enough of a return as well. For me, that's kind of where we're at with how we do stuff. And so that's why I do 4 shows a week through here. I'm fortunate enough to be able to say that I have seen financial return based on doing broadcasts like this, with people coming and wanting to consult and finding us and becoming new clients of ours through these services. So there is a direct return on investment, but we're here actually as part of our giving back and paying it forward kind of thing, with us giving something back into the community. And I think with building community, that's a really important thing, is how much time, effort, and any resources that you have that you can invest back into the community is really important as well. But answering the question about creating lists and checking how often you contact people, for us, we actually monitor and maintain, because we obviously mentor 60 businesses on 3 continents. So with those people, I know exactly when I last spoke to them and how I spoke to them, whether it was an email, a phone call and stuff. So I will always make sure that I communicate in different fashions with people as well. So if I find I email someone a lot, I'll find the best time for them. I'll maybe email them and say, it'd be great to have a catch up on the phone. What's a good time? And actually, this is a little tip, is if you're ever reaching out to someone to contact them, especially if it's maybe a new connection, is if you ask someone what the best time is, it's a difficult question, because people have to go work out or what if it changes. However, if you say to people, can you give me 3 times over the next week that suit you, and then I'll find one that suits me, rather than the conversation bouncing backwards and forwards, it's a very good and easy service it's a good way to do that. And to keep on top of, making that communication happen. So the interesting follow-up question, what tools do you use to track this? So I personally, I actually did a show around blogging with Sarah this morning, and we talked a little bit about how we manage things behind the scenes, because obviously a lot of how we keep on top of this. And this is, so there's not defaultly actually a CRM system within. So you can obviously keep all your contacts and things like that, and you can make notes against them through Google, but there's not actually its default kind of a proper CRM system for it. However, we've found a way to utilize Google Drive as a tool for us to use as a CRM. It's taken some structure and obviously training the people who are using it in how it works, but the same with anything, where we actually have full files on everything, every communication that we've had with someone. So if there was, we'd given some advice and then in a couple of months someone said, oh, well, I don't feel that, we've had enough phone calls or whatever, I can go back and say, oh, that's interesting because we've spent, X amount of time. And so for me, it's really, really important to have that information to hand. In the same way, if you're dealing with new people, little things like one of our, you can't see them, they're just off the screen here. There's behind me, there's our mission and values of the business. And one of them is to always take note. And that goes all the way down to if you meet someone, someone's serving you food or you're complaining about something, especially when you're complaining about something, remember their name. Someone's name is the sweetest sound they'll ever hear in any language because it showed you cared enough to take note of what their name was. Because quite often, especially if you're complaining, you'll hear their name at the beginning. And then at the end, you go, thanks a lot. Thanks for your time, Dawn. Sorry, couldn't help, but thanks a lot for your time. And that person is quite often taken aback because it's not common practice for people to do that.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Really just making sure that you have that, those little notes and those little things. If someone mentions, like I was watching an interview with Brian Fanzo earlier today, and he mentioned something about he loves sock monkeys. Well, that's like a little tidbit that I don't know how I missed that. So that's a little note I can make in my contact management software to say, you know what, that's a little special thing. So if an occasion ever comes up where I need to see him or, whatever, it's like, those are just little things that you just tuck away.
Yeah, absolutely. And those little bits of information are actually quite often the most powerful bits of information you collect. So even little things like, knowing how, someone that you work with in an office, you wouldn't necessarily, unless you made the effort to find out, know how many kids they have. But they might in passing say, oh, my son was ill this week. And so next week, when you go back to them and their son, or in a couple of weeks, how's the family? How's the kids? And the attention to detail to go back and bother to ask, it's making that effort as well, to follow up as well. So that's actually within business, within entrepreneurship, one of the biggest failings for a lot of businesses is exactly a bit of the conversation that's going on the side here, but on Blab is actually to do with follow-up. A lot of people are not so bad at making communication and starting the ball rolling, but it's follow-up. And what do I follow up with? It's having a process so that after I do this, I actually do when we communicate, because I work a lot within the media and press industry. When I send out stuff, I actually track my emails so I know when they've been read and things like that. So I can do a follow-up, because if that person might get caught really busy, forget about the email, not follow up. If I didn't follow up, that's the end of the communication. But I would then do that and go forwards. Another way to do it is if you've got important things where you've had a meeting, when you come out of the meeting, like we, big advocate for Google and Google Apps, Google Calendar, really simple, go to Google Calendar and in a week, put in a reminder. As soon as you come out, put a reminder there that just pops up on your phone or on your emails and just says, don't forget to, call Dawn to have a chat about last week. And a little note about what the stuff was. So when it comes to a week's time, when it pops up, you can open it and notes for what you need to talk about are already there. So it's like a prompt. It's like it's a little bit like having your own PA that pops up and says, hey, don't forget, ring Dawn and check that, we've followed up from what it was this week. So that's a little tip for using Google Calendars as a tool for that. So, I mean, there's various different things. Obviously, within CRM systems, they've got prompts and things like that, or automations to pop up and to tell you. So that's definitely worth having a look at. I don't know, what do you use, Dawn, for scheduling your stuff?
Yeah, that's definitely one of the things. I think the larger the community that you are, I'll say, managing, or that you're trying to stay on top of or serve, the more you'll need to rely on external things to help like just to basically help organize your brain, because these are, at some point, things will fall off your plate. So the more you have those types of tools, the better. So I mentioned one of the convenience things that I have, for instance, if a connection, I want to have like I said, schedule a video chat with someone. Some simple app like appointlet.com is brilliant. I love it. So I basically know, because I need to respect my own time as well. So I can say, hey, you know what? I will be available for video chats with people, from 8 to 9 in the morning and from 4 to 5, depending on where they are on the globe. This is when I am. And then I use something like appearin.net appear.in to, that's another tool, that is basically a little private video chat space, so that so it's literally like setting up meetings, but it's making that self-service, so that if there's something that came up in a Twitter chat, I've had post blab meetings afterwards, because there was a question someone had about customizing something or more in depth about Twitter chats. Well, I know, hey, I've set aside this little block of time for video chatting with folks.
Yeah, and I think that's you've come upon a good point there. Following the conversation around how do you do the follow-up, how do you track it, and things like that. I think it's really important to be conscious of your time and the other people's time. So if you've had a conversation, not to just drag it, and when you go back intentionally. So it's not just I'm following up for the sake of following up. It's I'm following up because there's a reason to follow up, or that I can offer something like, if you'd heard that someone was after trying to find something, and then later you don't have it to hand, but you could go and follow up and say, hey, actually, here's a link to a document that from the chat last week I thought you might find useful, or, a bit of advice, having a very set intention as to why you're going back and talking to that person as well.
Yeah, I think that just the follow-up and the generosity, these are like two themes that I just keep hearing, coming out of our little quick accelerated blab tonight, is just using tools that will help me organize my follow-up and help me to follow through, so that I can deliver on any kind of generous gesture or impulse that may have come across my brain. But then, also using those kinds of tools to also put boundaries on my time as well, and say, you know what, I've got a 15-minute slot for you, and that's it. And saying that that's okay, because my time is valuable. So
and I think that your own, like you say, your own time is nearly as important. I always obviously value other people's time even higher than my own, but both are obviously important. And so finding the right tools is really important, because it's in the world of all things that are digital media and communication. Anything you can do to make things slicker and save yourself time, obviously is something that's going to benefit you in the long run. So it's a really it's key to go and find those things. And actually the way to fast track yourself to finding those tools is actually to go to people who are already using them. It's the same as to learn from people. Go and find people who have already done it. It's the reason that people get mentors and coaches and things, is those people who can kind of drive you to where you need to be. Same with tools. If you see someone manages their time really well, ask them. Most people will tell you, they say, oh, how do you organize all your appointments? Well, actually, I use Google Apps, and then I push that through to my iPhone, and that pops on my phone every time something happens and gives me a 15-minute warning to wrap up because something else is about to happen. And so, just reaching out to people and not being afraid to that. Going back to the community aspect, people generally will want to share information. If they found something that's cool, people want to tell other people about it. Very rarely do you get people that don't want to share that. There are obviously few exceptions, but most people will share if they found something that's useful. So, yeah.
Well, I'm looking at the time, Tristan, and it's you.
Yeah, we're 2 minutes. I'm good for another 2 minutes. So
are there? I was curious if anyone had any questions. I mean, I'm so grateful that you've hopped in here, folks. And if there was something that you wanted us, or if you wanted to contribute about building communities that you've seen, something that you've watched, someone who's done it well. please feel free to throw a question in there or to ask us.
But if there is nobody who's got any specific questions or comments back, I wanted to again acknowledge, and this is an important thing, is making sure that you're acknowledging people within your own communities, whether it's in a live stream or just reaching out every now and then. I actually do on a Thursday. I actually do a Thankful Thursday where I actually just pick a couple of people that maybe I haven't spoken to in a while. So going back to that, how often do you communicate with people? Going through and looking for someone that I haven't spoken to for a while and saying, hey, I really appreciate, the connection that we've got. I'd love to hear what you've been up to. We haven't spoken in a couple of weeks. So doing that reach out there is really important. So in the same kind of ilk as that, I wanted to really extend a huge thank you to everyone who's here live with us on Blab, and everyone who's also taken the time out to watch the replay. We tried to keep them fairly tight as well so that the replays are valuable to the people, because we're conscious of people's time as well. So if you've got any questions or you want to contribute around the topic, or you want to suggest a topic that we can talk about on this show, please do feel free to use the hashtag ATNTalk over on Twitter. And then we can track that and we can follow your suggestions and your comments, and we can bring them to the next broadcast. So you'll see your questions answered live by us in the show. I'm hoping next week that we may have a special guest, but I'm going to keep it under wraps. And then if it comes up, then we'll announce it through the Twitters. So make sure that you're following. So Dawn's handle is @Decart, DECART, and mine for the work account is @ATWNetworking. If you follow us, you'll be sure to see the announcements of what the next show will be about, and if we've got any special guests coming up. If you're here on Blab or you've come over to Blab to watch it, you can go to the profiles. The handles are both the same, so it's blab.im / and then both the handles that I've just given. So thanks a lot for your time again, guys. Thanks a lot for your time, Dawn. Very appreciative of you jumping in and sharing and co-hosting the show with me. I always appreciate seeing your big, happy, smiley face and listening to the content you've got to share with me around the digital water cooler. And with that, I'm going to wrap up the recording so that we can get it repurposed for people to watch as a replay. So thanks a lot, guys. We'll catch you here at the same time next week for more conversation around the digital water cooler, revolving around building community.